One of the great ironies of Whitman's 1855 poem Song of Myself is that even though the poem opens with the seemingly brazen line, I celebrate myself, a great irony is we don't know who that self is. As I noted in another talk, the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass, where Song of Myself first appeared, lists no author. Now, if we look down on the copyright, we see Walter Whitman from Brooklyn, but there's no listing of the actual author of the text, so there's no sense of who this I is who is praising himself so much. Section 24 of Song of Myself, Whitman does tell us finally who he is. Walt Whitman, one of the roughs, a cosmos. This contradiction between brazen self-assertion and absence of a listing of an actual self is reinforced near the end of the poem, where Whitman famously says, do I contradict myself? Well, then I contradict myself. I contain multitudes, which on the one hand suggests a capacious self that is able to somehow bring together contradiction, but also it suggests fragmentation, a self that is opposed to itself. So both fullness and a crack at the same time. So I bring this up, this ambiguity of selfhood, of identity in Song of Myself, as a context. We're talking about a key moment in the poem's fourth section. Now, in 1855, Whitman did not number his sections. Later on, he did. So later on, the fourth section goes like this. Trippers and askers surround me, people I meet, the effect upon me of my early life, of the ward and city I live in, of the nation, the latest news, discoveries, inventions, societies, authors old and new, my dinner, dress, associates, looks, business, compliments, dues, the real or fancied indifference of some man or woman I love, the sickness of one of my folks, or of myself, or ill-doing, or loss or lack of money, or depressions or exultations. They come to me days and nights and go from me again, but they are not me, myself. So this me, Whitman capitalizes the first letter, M. So what does this say? It says that I'm in this world and I participate in all sorts of activities in this world. I meet people all the time. I live in a city and I move around the city all the time. I'm attuned to news, to discoveries, inventions. I think about what I'm going to have for dinner. I think about what I'm going to wear. I have business. I receive compliments. I'm sometimes hurt when I feel like a woman or a man I love is indifferent to me. I think about sickness. I think about money. I think about depression. I'm in this world. My body is in this world, engaged. I am committed to doing these things. I am one, we might say, with the world I move in. But yet that's not who I am. There's another part of me that is watching all of this. Now, we could call this self-consciousness, that part of our mind that watches us when we're doing things. Like right now, I am talking to you on my computer, but I can imagine what I look like from, say, that painting back there of William Blake. What do I look like? I can imagine what the back of my head looks like. So I'm here doing this with you, but also this isn't all of who I am. I'm not saying it's not who I am, but it's not all of who I am. There's always a part of us which we might say is not bodily present, but almost as if it hovers outside of our body and it thinks about what the body's doing. Maybe it evaluates what the body's doing. Maybe it celebrates what the body's doing. But Whitman's very clear that all of this stuff I'm doing, all the stuff that you can see me doing, all the stuff that I am engaged in, all the stuff I am committed to out in the visible world, the tactile world, that's not the real me. The real me does what? He gives us more detail. Apart from the pulling and hauling stands what I am, stands amused, complacent, compassionating, idle, unitary, looks down, is erect, bends an arm on an impalpable certain rest, looks with its side-curved head, curious what will come next, both in and out of the game, and watching and wondering at it. So this I, this me, myself, watches like a voyeur almost what's the actual body of Walt Whitman's doing. And when it watches, it's a little amused, a little complacent. It looks down. It's a little curious. What's going on down there? So he's both attached to what's going on in the physical world, but also he's detached. And so this idea that Whitman is not a unitary self is very important. It suggests that Whitman's self is divided at least between two activities. And again, one activity is just doing everyday stuff in the world, and another activity is somehow watching what's going on in the everyday world, watching bemused or compassionate or a little askance, a little curious. I may have said the word bemused, but that's a good word, bemused. Whitman, throughout this poem, talks about his body and his soul. And he says, I value the body and the soul equally. There's this really powerful passage where he imagines the soul almost sexually assaulting his body, where the soul becomes kind of like a person, a lover, and lies athwart the body of Walt Whitman and sticks its tongue into his heart, like penetrates him. The tongue of the soul penetrates the heart of the body. And at that moment, there's a feeling that Whitman becomes distributed throughout the entire world and identifies with everything from the stars to the lichen and the pokeweed. I say that because one way to think about this difference between body and soul, I think, in the poem, is to think about this distinction between the me that is in the world, merging, enmeshing, cohabitating, enacting, that part of myself, and then the part of myself that can stand back and watch what is going on. So what we need to get about this poem is that a self is both actual and potential. It's both material and immaterial. It's both engaged and disengaged. It's both attached and detached at the same time. So how does this work for the poem? We see Whitman's I, and now we're getting a sense that the I is far from unitary. We see the I constantly just pay attention to stuff, right? Like, for instance, Section 8 begins one of Whitman's most famous catalogs, where he just lists thing after thing after thing that his eye experiences out in the world. He says, the little one sleeps in its cradle. I lift the gauze and look a long time, and silently brush away flies with my hand. The youngster and the red-faced girl turn aside up the bushy hill. I peeringly view them from the top. The suicide sprawls on the bloody floor of the bedroom. It is so. I witnessed the corpse. There the pistol had fallen. The blab of the pave, the tires of carts and slough of boot soles and talk of the promenaders, the heavy omnibus, the driver with his interrogating thumb, the clank of the shod horses on the granite floor, the carnival of sleighs, the clinking and shouted jokes and pelts of snowballs, the hurrahs for popular favorites, the fury of roused mobs, the flap of the curtain litter, the sick man inside, borne to the hospital. And so it goes. This is one of many long catalogs. So I think of these catalogs as a way of studying how the double Whitman self moves in the world. We might say that the body is that part of him which is empathetically kind of through a sense of touch or taste or hearing or sight or sound is, oh, look at this baby, I want to be near this baby, I want my body to be near this baby. Oh, and look at all these other things. Look at the red-faced boy. Look at the suicide. Listen to the people talking on the pavement. So this is someone who is in the world. He is, we might say, if we go back to the language of section 4, this is someone who is meeting people and is aware of who likes him and who doesn't like him, who is aware of depressions and exaltations, who cares, right? But the fact that Whitman can move so quickly from one perception to another, and the fact that he can value not just one thing, but 2 things, 3 things, 40 things, 100 things, I think this shows the soul. I think the soul is equivalent to me, myself, and I think the body is equivalent to the attached part of Whitman who is out in the world doing stuff. So most of us probably, if we saw a suicide sprawling on the street, we'd be like, oh my gosh, and we would just sit there and be consumed by it. And probably wouldn't be able to think or do anything. We'd be so overwhelmed by this. But there's a way in which Whitman's able to say, oh, I've noticed it. I've paid attention to it. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm going to move on to something else. So the soul is that part of Whitman's self that is constantly curious for what's next, constantly open to the future, constantly wondering what will turn around, what's around this corner, what's over this hill. So a sense of potentiality, a sense of the future, but of course to move from an actual experience that is all-consuming to a sense of potentiality requires some detachment. So there's this detachment from Whitman here. So if the body is actuality, the soul is potentiality. If the body is the present, the soul is future. If the body is a desire to stay and pay attention, the soul is that which wants to move on to the next thing. So we can see that these 2 sides of Whitman's self not only suggest a sort of epistemology, pay close attention to what's around you, but not too close, because you got to keep moving, but also this dual self suggests Whitman's method for writing the poem, which is a poem driven not so much by some kind of linear structure, there's no narrative to it, but is more driven by what this eye is going to pay attention to next. And so this eye has to keep moving forward, but also this eye has to pay close attention to what is there, which gives the poem its vividness, its tactility, its viscerality.